Welcome to Wellness Wednesday, staying safe and sound, maintaining a realistic work-life balance in uncertain times. Today, our speaker is Brian Quinn. He is a licensed attorney in Pennsylvania who currently serves as the Education and Outreach Coordinator for Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers of Pennsylvania, a lawyer's assistance program established in 1988 for the purpose of helping lawyers, judges, and law students recover from alcoholism, drug addiction, and mental health disorders. If you have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat function and we will get it answered towards the end of the session. Okay, Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Audrey. And hello, everyone. I'm coming to you from suburban Philadelphia, and I understand it's a warm day in San Diego, as it is here in Eastern Pennsylvania. And my name is Brian Quinn. As you know, I'm an attorney and the Education and Outreach Coordinator for Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers of Pennsylvania, which is Pennsylvania's Lawyers Assistance Program. And today's program is indeed entitled Staying Safe and Sound, Maintaining a Work-Life Balance in Uncertain Times. I actually renamed the title to include the word realistic work-life balance for reasons that I'll attempt to point out to you during the program. But first, I want to speak to you about lawyers' assistance programs in general, and I do have some information to share with you about California's program. They're not all the same, and obviously I always encourage people to consult with their local programs website. All 50 states have a program. Some are a little bit more, let's say, independent of state bars, associations, etc., than others. We are an independent nonprofit that was formed in 1988 for the sole purpose of providing a caring peer assistance program to attorneys, judges, members of their families, law students who are at risk as a result of alcohol and drug use or mental health issues. So this is what we call our services slide. I'm not a clinician. I am merely a lawyer. I will be referring to clinical terms from time to time. My real role here is to raise your awareness levels about some of these issues that we're facing in our profession. I can tell you that some programs in this country do have clinicians on staff. We make referrals for an evaluation by a healthcare professional, whereas others will actually engage with the caller and schedule a healthcare mental health or substance use evaluation. I present to throughout the country, and ACC, I'm happy to say, is very active. I love the fact that you call this Wellness Wednesday webinar. I think that's a great thing, and I'm going to actually share that with other folks, because just by having that title to your Wednesday programs shows me that your chapter really is mindful and aware of these challenges that are facing all of us in this profession of ours, especially the impact of the pandemic. So we operate a 24/7 confidential helpline and peer assistance program. Most of the time, I get questions about confidentiality. It's probably the number one concern and why lawyers don't reach out. And I don't mean Pennsylvania, I mean across the country. The ABA does monitor that. And it is the number one reason given by lawyers why they will not reach out. Fear of disclosure, fear that it won't be held confidential. So we do not have voicemail, for example, on our phones, and no one need to give their information. You can remain completely and entirely anonymous and still get all of our free services. What's up on the screen right now is the California State Bar Lawyers Assistance Program information. And Audrey's going to make this PowerPoint information available to all of you. I think she's going to send you a PDF version of this if she hasn't done so already. And if she hasn't, it's because I didn't get it to her until earlier this morning. So it's my fault that you don't already have it. But the American Bar Association has the directory of lawyers assistance programs by state. I have the California information. Those numbers are for the California Bar Program. There are 2 physical locations, one in San Francisco and one in Los Angeles. And as you can see, there are resources that you can log on to, and hopefully they will answer any questions you have about their particular program. And when in doubt, once you get my information, you can always contact me and LCL of Pennsylvania. As I said, I operate all over the country, and I'd be glad to answer any questions and direct you to the folks in your area. One of the most important things we do is provide peer assistance. We have in Pennsylvania over 300 peer volunteers. I'm sure there's more than that in a big state like California. But many times our callers simply want to talk to somebody. They want to talk to a lawyer who may have experienced some of the things that the caller is going through, and that's a big help. I'd say that of the people who call us, about 75 or 80%, excuse me, end up accepting some form of our services, and usually it's that peer volunteer pairing that they're interested in. So that's a big part of what we do. So let's talk about some of the problems that people are facing as far as anonymity, confidentiality. Check the rules of professional conduct for California, and if you're licensed in another state, check those rules as well, because they're not all the same. Most states follow the American Bar Association model rules of professional conduct, and one of the concerns is, well, will I be turned in? Will I be reported to the disciplinary authorities if I've committed an ethical violation? And there is an exception to the duty to report. So check your rules, check to make sure that, and it's 8.3, and I don't know why I don't have it on this slide. I should, and I apologize that I don't, but it's rule 8.3 in most states, or 8.3C is the exception to the duty to report. Any information gained by a lawyer or judge while participating in an approved lawyer's assistance program is subject to the exception to the duty to report. So that information is safe. And I want to get into the to the heart of the program right now. You know, we're well into 2022, that's for sure. These uncertain times. If I heard the words "new normal" one more time, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. But we're several months into the year. As far as resolutions, those days have come and gone for many of us. But it can still be a time for reflection about why we did or didn't make, or more importantly, keep any of those resolutions. And let's face it, well, for corporate lawyers, corporate resolutions, there are other types of resolutions as well. A resolution is really just a firm decision to do or not to do something. It's the quality of being determined or resolute. That's pretty simple. As lawyers, we have no problem being determined, and we're always making decisions to do or not to do something. And we are also known to be great negotiators and resolvers of conflict. So I guess it's that darn word firm that gets in the way for many of us. So what makes them so difficult to keep, these resolutions? As we all set out this year in 2022 to accomplish the goals we set in both 2021 and 2020, until something called COVID came along. But if we're honest with ourselves, those were really things we meant to do in 2019 because we made promises in 2018 that we planned in 2017. You get the message here. Let's talk about some of those plans and goals and see what part they play in achieving, and more importantly, maintaining a realistic work-life balance in uncertain times as we enter, then re-enter, the new normal of our lives. The goalposts are always moving on what the new normal is and looks like. But I want to start by looking at some of the problems that we face as lawyers every day, whether we know it or perhaps don't. The legal profession has been at an increased risk to develop problems with alcohol, drugs, and mental health issues for many years, certainly long before the impact of COVID-19 was felt. So I want to examine some of the issues that impact far more than our resolutions, far more than our work-life balance. In many cases, they impact our lives, our very existence, really, and the lives of our families, our clients, and our colleagues as well. So back in 2015, way before COVID, the American Bar Association felt that it was time to start looking into these issues and lawyer wellness in general. And they got involved with the Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation, and in particular, a gentleman named Patrick Krill, who was a lawyer and a certified drug and alcohol counselor, who at the time was involved with Hazelden. Now he's an independent consultant to the legal profession on lawyer wellness. And Krill formulated a set of questions that he then submitted to nearly 13,000 licensed lawyers throughout the United States. I think 19 different states were represented. And when he got these replies back about drug use, alcohol use, and mental health issues, he came to the conclusion that his findings were inconsistent with a sustainable professional culture. And here's one of the reasons. Krill found that lawyers and problematic drinking have quite a lot in common. In fact, 21% of all licensed attorneys are problematic drinkers, and that means someone who doesn't just have one or two too many once or twice too often. It's someone who drinks to the point of it being hazardous to their health, or possibly even alcohol dependency. And that nearly a third of all lawyers under the age of 30 are problem drinkers. And this is 5 years before COVID, so we can't blame it on that. That compares with 11% of the highly educated adults in this country, and as you can see, only 6.4%. I say only because I'm comparing it to the percentage of lawyers of the entire U.S. population. I'm not going to go through this, but you are going to have this information. So, when you get a chance, this is kind of an alcohol assessment. Some of you may have seen these, maybe 15, 20 question quizzes, so to speak, lack of a better word. Be honest, be objective. No one's going to know how you answer them. So go through them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of them that I want you to be to look at. About whether people have ever been concerned about your drinking, what kind of an impact drinking has, how you feel about alcohol and your need to have a drink, and how you use it to maybe relieve yourself of stress, whether it's led to any legal or ethical problems for you, home life problems, professional problems. So look these things over. And as I said, be honest, be objective, because answering yes to even 1 or 2 of these might be reason enough for you to take a harder look at your drinking and to examine the role it plays in your life. Beyond 1 or 2, the more of these you answered affirmatively, the more important it is that you get an assessment. And as I said, many lawyers tell me, gee whiz, I don't want to go to the HR people at my office, at my firm, in my company. And I understand that. And that's where sometimes I present at the request of HR people. And I tell them, look, what they tell you is not covered by these confidentiality rules with respect to the duty to report misconduct. What they tell a lawyer's assistance program representative is. So keep that in mind. What you tell us is stays with us, and that means even with respect to disciplinary, otherwise reportable incidents. I'm not downing HR folks, but what I'm saying is that we are different from them. And the difference is that we only work with lawyers, judges, their family members. And that's a big thing. And I'm sorry that I don't know how far reaching California's program is with respect to family members, how far they put it. But I know that we, for example, in Pennsylvania, don't stop at household members. It's not the household members of lawyers, it's the family members. And that means anybody who can connect themselves by blood, by marriage, by former marriage to a Pennsylvania lawyer or judge qualifies for our free confidential services. And I say that because, you know, if someone in even your distant or remote family has a problem, sometimes it has its way of finding itself back to you. And if it has any potential impact on a Pennsylvania lawyer, our organization, our LAP, Lawyers Assistance Program, wants to be of assistance. So check into that. It's a big item. Does it cover family members, and what's that definition of family? But when it came to mental health, Krill also examined that as well. And these were rather startling statistics. Now, over the years, depression has been the #1 mental health concern. I can tell you right now that is not the case anymore. Stress is now the #1 presenting mental health issue in our profession. It certainly exceeds when I can tell you that in Pennsylvania in 2017, 40% of our callers were calling about primarily a mental health concern. It went to 80%. It doubled by the end of 2020. Just amazing. I mean, I take this the right way. I'm happy to know that it doubled, because not because it tells me more people have mental health problems, because frankly, I think that many lawyers had them but didn't want to talk about them. They didn't want to deal with the stigma that surrounds mental health issues. But it was easy to say, I think I drink a little bit too much, or maybe they don't want to tell us why they were drinking, to kind of maybe make those feelings of stress, anxiety, and depression go away. But I can tell you that stress is now the #1 mental health concern in our profession. And yes, that is a result of the pandemic. But when Krill did his study, you can see he found that 28% of all attorneys suffer from depression. That's not the mood swings that we all have, everyday ups and downs of life. I'm talking about people who, when you use the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that medical professionals use, qualified as having a depression disorder, 28%, stress disorder, 23%, anxiety disorder. If you simply ask them, how do you feel? I feel very anxious. 62% of the respondents said they thought that they suffer from anxiety. But when you analyze their actual responses, almost 20% qualified as under the DSM criteria for a anxiety disorder, and even higher rates than those among younger lawyers. So that's the background that we find ourselves in. And of course, as we moved into 2020 and the pandemic occurred, and now the stress and anxiety that's related to this returning to the new normal, you know, it's still with us. It certainly still is with us. There was another, and this I have this slide on your particular program because this had to do with corporate and firm respondees, and it was performed by ALM Intelligence and Law.com, and this was updated in May, just last month, May of 2022. It was first done in February of 2020, right before the pandemic. So they just updated it. And these are the updated statistics. The overwhelming majority of legal professionals believe their mental well-being is worse off as a result of their chosen career. As you can see, 74% feel the profession, their chosen profession, has had a negative impact on their mental health. How do they deal with their stress? 44% said that they use alcohol to deal with stress. That's their number one go-to way of dealing with it. And it was up to 67%. Now, this was not DSM criteria based. This is simply, how do you feel? What's going on? Tell me about it. 67% in this survey said they felt they suffer from anxiety. Okay. Isolation, that was not in the first study that was done by this organization, but 44% reported feelings of isolation that were negative feelings of isolation. Obviously, that's pandemic related. But that's that last number on this particular screen that is the most troublesome, that 19%, and that is an increase over the one that was done in 2020. 19% have contemplated suicide, have had a suicidal ideation at some point in their careers. That compares to the National Institute of Health statistic that 4.3% of all adults have a suicidal ideation at some point in their lifetime. 4.3%, and here 19% of attorneys. Nearly a third of the people responding said that their use of alcohol and drugs had increased since they became licensed attorneys. So this one really shed some light on life inside of a law firm and a corporate setting, and how the mental health programs in those companies and firms are viewed, and the causes of mental health challenges. So when they were asked what about their job negatively impacts their mental well-being, there were many factors, but the most popular by far was the feeling of always being on call and unable to disconnect. For those who work on a billable hour and are not, salaried employees of the company, billable hour pressures, lack of sleep, and client demands. They didn't like to take time off. Only slightly over a third used all their vacation time. And they cited the same reason. They don't want to face all the work waiting for them when they return. They can't disconnect, and they still can't escape client demands. So that's why not being able to disconnect, I think, is what prompts many lawyers to feel that they need to take advantage of that small window to relax in their busy work day or work week, and what's going to take them back from 60 to 0 easier than a few drinks or maybe a pill. So when you added this work from home due to COVID, it really opened a Pandora's box of unintended consequences. The other statistics have to do with, how many people know someone who's depressed, stressed, anxious. But this slide kind of always makes me chuckle a little bit, because nearly 2/3 felt they could not take an extended leave from their employment to tend to their mental health issues. Why? Hurt their careers, fearful of what people in their firm or their company would think. But over half said, I just have too much work to do to take an extended leave. So keep in mind, folks, that the work that they do as lawyers is what causes the mental health problems. And they say they have too much of it, i.e. the work, to take care of the problem caused by the work. So the cause of the problem and the reason they don't take care of it are the same. The work that they do as lawyers. Doesn't seem to be very logical, does it? But that's the answers that the people gave. Once again, this is more for your edification and your review later on. I have some slides on here about depression and what it is and what causes it. There are many possible causes of depression, but the ones that are on the screen right now are right out of the DSM criteria. But one of the ones that we never really thought about, all the ones about feeling helplessness and hopeless and worthless and decreased pleasure, we all know about them. But always there as part of the criteria is social or occupational distress and isolation. Social distress. social isolation, occupational distress, and occupational isolation. Thanks to the pandemic, those words certainly seem to mean something well different than they ever did before. You never really thought too much about that part of the criteria for depression. But social isolation and occupational isolation, wow, now we know what that means. Stressful life events. do I have to do I have to be the one to say out loud that COVID is not is certainly a stressful life event indeed? And I did my first COVID related impact on mental health presentation in March of 2020 because everything got just canceled. All my programs got canceled. I did most of them live back then. And I had to come up with something. And so I chose that. And that's when I said, well, I'm going to go out on a limb and call COVID a collective societal, or even generational traumatic event. Well, I think it's pretty well been proven that COVID is a collective, societal, even generational traumatic event. And trauma certainly is also part of depression, as is grief, which is a normal response to loss during a traumatic event. But in this case, it wasn't just a response to loss of life. It was a response to the drastic changes to our daily routines and our ways of life that usually brought us feelings of comfort and stability. So that's what we saw coming on there. But yeah, it's time to get to that number one problem that now we see in our world of lawyers assistance programs, and taking over first place in the mental health impairment world for us is stress. What is it? It consists of the following sequence of elements: a stimulus, a thought, an emotion, and a behavior. Our mental response to stress reflects how we first perceive and then subsequently think about any given situation in our lives. Our brains are constantly evaluating our present circumstances and defining them as rewarding, risky, threatening, or possibly even unknown. And that initial response operates on a subconscious level, and it really influences our emotional and our physical responses, which are interrelated. So that subconscious process and analysis of every situation we encounter is really part of our instinctive survival mechanism we inherited from our ancient ancestors. And yes, it is indeed similar to the animal kingdom's freeze, fight, or flight response, as the brain sends these signals out to the rest of our brain, triggering these specific chemical reactions. Now, sometimes it propels us to take action immediately in an emergency to get out of harm's way, or trigger a fear-based response, causing us to strike out in defense, and then perhaps later regret those actions. But we really can, however, exert some conscious control over our thoughts and emotions and learn to put the brakes on impulsive, harmful, or inappropriate emotions and behavior. A little bit of training and an awareness allows us to exert some control over those automatic physical and emotional responses. We really can and must consciously change our reactions if we're going to reach our full potential in life. And that means we need to learn to hit the pause button, to thoughtfully respond rather than to instinctively react. So, do you stay calm and unruffled, looking for solutions? Or do you get angry and look for somebody to blame? Some people are stress hardy, don't seem to be affected by the pressures and problems of daily living. I don't know too many people that haven't been affected by the pressures and problems of COVID, but there were some who thrived when the challenges put before them, and others are unable to withstand any pressure or difficulty without being upset or rendered unable to act. Most of us fall somewhere in between. So it's thoughtful, optimistic, and calm emotional responses that reduce harmful stress. Resentment, anxiety, anger generate harmful stress. Our individual responses may differ from one another because of our individual differences as human beings. Otherwise, we would all react in the same manner to a given situation. So we do need to look at our genetic makeup, our childhood experiences, our environments, our present circumstances like our health, our finances, our personal relationships, previous similar experiences. really our awareness and our understanding of what is happening and what can be done, and here come the key words, if anything, about a situation. Lawyers don't like those words, if anything. What do you mean, what can be done, if anything? I know what needs to be done, and I'm the one who's going to do it because I'm a problem solver. That's my job. That's why people hire me. That's why people want me to be their lawyer, to solve their problems. So I always ask people at this point in the presentation, are you a problem solver or are you just a problem collector? I'll probably ask that again. Problem solver or just a problem collector? So sometimes you're going to find that you're going to deal well with a particular stressor. I'm sure we've all experienced that. Some days, wow, I'm dealing poorly with the same stressor. Maybe it has something to do with the way we're feeling physically and emotionally at the time. It may mean whether it's a first time experience. Did we have a prior similar experience that had a positive or a negative outcome that kind of predisposed us? Were we properly prepared? What was our immediately preceding mental or physical state? Were we hungry, angry, lonely, tired, ill, injured, surprised, caught off guard, depressed, anxious, fearful? All those factors affect how we perceive and react to our present circumstances. So let's ask ourselves a few questions about the stress in our lives. So I can tell you that I've been doing this program like this for 5 years that I've had this job. And always at the top of the one, how stressed are you, is the number one answer. My work requires me to do too much in too little time. Always numero uno. I don't have enough time to spend with my family and friends. Kind of changed during the pandemic too. I've been around my family so much that they're driving me crazy. But the physical environment of where I work, for those who are back in a work in the traditional office setting, that was always a problem. And yes, dealing with too many unreasonable and difficult people, that's probably the second most popular answer. I deal with too many unreasonable and difficult people, and we all know who they are. We call them clients in our profession. And yes, if you're a litigator, you have to refer to them as your honor once in a while as well. Some people feel that their firm or their department in the company is too focused on profit. They start to, we see people calling and telling us when things aren't going well. We hear words like, my work bores me. I'm not good at what I do. I'm not making a positive contribution on society or the lives of other people. What I do doesn't deserve any respect or maybe even get enough respect. And that's when the ultimate stressor starts to come in, and we hear, I'm overly responsible, not for some things and some people, but everything and everyone. Why? Well, because I'm a problem solver. That's my job. Once again, folks, overly responsible for everything. Are you really solving everybody's problems? Are you just collecting so many problems that, hey, maybe you don't have enough time to think about your own? You start to feel depressed, defeated, and hopeless. You just can't get it all done. Sometimes you do rely on alcohol and drugs to help you feel better. Sometimes that can lead to wanting to just give up and quit, or give up and give up. And as I already mentioned, the suicidal ideation is on the rise. That percentage is going up, unfortunately, not going down. So too many events, too many changes, too many demands in our lives. Despite the fact that some stress being healthy and positive stressors can energize and motivate us to be productive and creative problem solvers, when there's too many changes or demands, even positive ones in our lives, it can leave us feeling overwhelmed and sometimes paralyzed with worry about how we're going to get it all done. And at that point, when life seems too much for us to handle, stress is not your ally anymore, folks. It's become your foe. And that's when you've entered into a life of distress. And the warning I need to give you is that you can be in distress and not even know it. It doesn't happen just like that. It can be gradual and incremental increases in our responsibilities, duties, pressures, demands at home and at work. And then within the work from home environment, they got jumbled up all the time. No commuting, fine. start earlier, end later. The workday began earlier, ended later, interspersed with some personal issues that came into play in your household during the pandemic, making that combination long work days, long work weeks even more risky. Stop for a moment. Recall the last time you were acutely aware you're under a lot of stress. It was probably a crisis that left you feeling that you had lost control, because some folks seem to think lawyers always need to be in control. I wonder where they came up with that idea. My tongue is firmly planted in my cheek. Lost control of a situation or its outcome. The truth, however, is that you were probably already under a lot of stress, and the crisis merely accentuated your awareness of it. So many, if not most, lawyers are truly in a state of denial as to the amount of stress they're under. And aside from the external demands placed on lawyers, are the internal demands we place on ourselves. Perfectionism has long been a trait of lawyers. We push ourselves to work harder, and despite our accomplishments, we still don't believe we measure up. The workaholic, and there is such a problem, trying to relax creates feelings of distress because there's always something that needs to be done. Perfectionism, workaholism. Therapists tell us that the workaholic stuffs their feelings, actually. That is, as they experience life's eventual troubles, eventual being the key word, and periods of pain and sorrow and difficulty, they stay busy with work and don't allow themselves the experience of feeling pain or sorrow, nor do they discuss their innermost feelings with anybody else. Then, if they have a time when there's no busy schedule in front of them and those feelings come back, it causes them discomfort because they've never really had to deal with them before, because their solution has always been to get busy. And you can operate that way for years under the influence of these internal demands, but remain unaware of their existence. Benjamin Cardozo once wrote, and you probably didn't hear this one in law school, but I'm going to tell it to you. Cardozo once wrote that happiness may not exist in a successful lawyer's life. Quote, unquote, Cardozo. In the dark about what's behind this unhappiness, we change jobs and careers and divorce and remarry and move to new homes and cities, all in this vain attempt to find happiness. And at some point, work can dominate our lives and keep us at a chronically high level of distress. Yet we're often unaware that we've lost balance in our lives. And yes, balance is the key. Balance is everything. And I have quotation marks around that because I borrowed that from that famous philosopher of life, Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid. Balance is indeed the key. Humans are social animals. We're hardwired for connection. Remember that isolation is one of the primary ways that lawyers use to hide or avoid discussing what's really going on in their lives. Isolating, avoiding interaction. For all of us, isolation and loneliness can exacerbate anxiety and depression and even impact our physical health. So lawyers are at greater risk to resort to negative behavior to make things better. And that's why it's important to stay connected as best we can and reach out for support when we need it, even as we limit some of the events that we may be attending as a result of the pandemic and the impact and the maybe the fear that isn't completely gone away. Sometimes staying connected may come with some risks, but they're not the kind of risks that I think that you may be thinking of. So what does all this uncertainty mean for us, especially for lawyers? Which leads me to talk briefly about anxiety, which is worry. It's intrusive worrying. Worrying is a habit. Nearly everybody does it occasionally. It's a normal response to problems and the unknown. It's when that worry escalates into a story, our story, which we play out this hypothetical scenario in our imagination, it usually begins with two words: what if, followed by the worst case scenario your brain can imagine. That is what we call unproductive worry, not productive worry. And anxiety is right behind that. If you get into that worst case scenario mentality over and over and over and over. We've all quickly adapted to online opportunities as a result of the pandemic, working from home. School was online for a while, socializing changed, healthcare needs and telemedicine, telehealth, overnight digital connections became commonplace, with many of us feeling fortunate to have that access. But you've got to remember, all of that still produced a lot of stress for many of us. So I want to look at some of the other issues. And that's my former grand dog, Max, who I thought had a face that just reeked of burnout. Poor Max. That's what happens when we have untreated stress, untreated anxiety. We've all heard of it. It's called burnout. We live in a culture of disconnection, distraction, and overload that is a perfect breeding ground for burnout. And the law, with its unforgiving culture, long hours, and billable time system of compensation and productivity, presents especially acute risks for burnout. Keeping in mind that Cardozo quote about happiness, burnout and long hours appear to be making life miserable for the most dissatisfied lawyers. For those of you who are interested, there's a Bloomberg Law survey of in-house lawyers, and it found that in-house lawyers with the lowest job satisfaction scores worked an average of, this was in 2021, 60.9 hours per week. The lawyers with the most dissatisfaction worked an average of 57 hours a week, and it was the most dissatisfied lawyers basically said they feel burnout more often, by far, 74% of the time on average, while satisfied lawyers feel 28% of the time. So I don't want to talk too much about surveys. It's not the rehash surveys. That's not what this purpose of this program is. But I think it bears some mentioning. These are the symptoms of burnout: fatigue, cynicism, inefficacy. The burned out lawyer feels generally disengaged. They feel they don't have access to adequate resources. I don't mean financial resources. It means the person dealing with high level of stress doesn't have resources like social support, helpful advice, feedback from friends or colleagues, or control over how they spend their time. So the burned out lawyer isn't excited about their work, even the major successes and things that they once loved. They feel generally disengaged. The burned out lawyer feels like they're exerting significant effort, but not making any progress. Just another day on the grindstone. Okay. And of course, fatigue is really something, not just sleep deprivation. So you really see a drop in productivity, an increased desire to be alone. Once again, there's that isolation issue that's already a problem for lawyers. So if you feel like this, there are steps you can take to improve your situation. One of the very first big steps is to identify the problem. Once you've done that, there are some things that we can do about it. These are some of the signs that we look for, and there's no medical diagnosis. Once again, there's no DSM criteria and medical criteria for the condition known as burnout. It can look like a lot of other things, so it's very important, if you have a doctor, that they make sure that they're not treating you for depression when it's not depression, treating you for anxiety when it's not anxiety, it's burnout. Burnout is 100% work stress related, and as relates to what we're talking about here today. It's not caused by some genetic issues or personality disorder. some of the other mental health issues. So we got to figure out what we're going to do about it. And the first thing we got to remember to do is to set realistic goals. Remember, I said I inserted that and come up with some strategies that work. Okay, realistic goals for yourself. A common mistake when setting a goal is to indulge in a fantasy about how great your life's going to be after accomplishing it without considering what's currently holding you back. So sometimes you have to contrast mentally your hoped for outcome with an obstacle that stands in your path, because it'll energize you and motivate you and prepare you to make a plan for when and how you'll take action. Okay, and this is what we call whooping it up, where you have a wish, an outcome, an obstacle, and a plan. That's the strategy. Okay, it actually helps you. It energizes you and motivates you. Okay, it really does, because otherwise you're dealing with wishes. Okay, a goal without a plan is just a wish. But resolving to change, however fervently you wish to do so, is no guarantee you're actually going to follow through. And one reason is because most goals can't be accomplished all at once and on the spot, and that's what lawyers like. It's part of our personality. So we need a way to bridge our current intentions with our future actions. And contrary to popular belief, you don't need more willpower, you need a strategy. And that begins with priorities. And as Stephen Covey points out, I love this quote, the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. And that means prioritizing your day. Visualize how you want to spend each day and what would make you most productive. Start making small, deliberate changes that allow you to uphold your priorities and get them done effectively. I don't know how many people out there are list makers, but hey, don't overdo it. One of the things, the traps we fall into is we put 10 things on that list, and being the perfectionist mental mentality that we've got, we get 8 or 9 done, and we stare at the 1 or 2 on the list that we didn't do. And say, I had a bad day, I had a bad week. Put 3 or 4 things on there. You have a realistic, remember the key word, realistic chance of succeeding. And you'll be energized by that. Focus on 3 or 4 things. You'll see a reduction in your stress level. Time management, minimizing distractions. Okay, it's all part of time management. That's my internal cue to remind you that one of the things that lawyers assistance programs do is give free literature, free books. Check out the website for the California program. See what kind of literature and books that they have that are free. And by the way, if you don't see them, or if you go on our website at lclpa.org, look at our library. We'll send them to you, all for free. If you can't find it anywhere, but you know there's a book out there that exists, send us the name and the author if you have it, and we'll find it for you, and we'll mail it to you for free. What a deal. Okay. I never succeeded with the time management, minimizing distractions too well. One of my problems was email. I felt compelled to respond whenever I saw that little notification, like the one that popped up on my screen a few minutes ago that I thought I had silenced, but I didn't. And some of you may have seen my eyes go to the lower right-hand side because I have another monitor behind this one. And, I'm already thinking about it and responding. It's like a tennis match, sensing to hit the ball back immediately, like a Federer or a Serena. Needless to say, it's a distraction that bothers me, even though I keep it up. I resolved to shut my email window until I was ready to respond to emails. The problem is that I always thought they were important, and they were 911 matters. So try to do things like that by prioritizing what's on your schedule. One of the priorities should be to include the use of schedule your priorities. I just confused everybody now. Use some quick stress busters. Be intentional with your time and your space. Take regular breaks. And I mean by that, mental health breaks. Okay. Even in the comfort of your own home, sometimes we find it hard to find any relief. And the culprit is that 24/7 always on culture that emerged from hypercommunication. Digital connectivity at an all-time high helped us all adapt, circumvent, respond to the disruptions waged by COVID. But suddenly those work meetings could take place at any time of the day without warning. Spontaneous, instantaneous responses became the expectation, or have become the expectation and the norm. Okay, the new normal. Recent data shows that remote workers clock more time as a result of the work from home environment than they did beforehand, sometimes as many as 60 hours a month, because they don't have to commute anymore. Perhaps maybe that's just enough of a reason right there. From what I seem to recall about the freeways in your state, that's a pretty substantial amount of time for a lot of people. Hypercommunication, it may wreak havoc on our lives in some ways. If we're not careful, it'll compromise our productivity and subject us to information overload, constant distraction, and yes, even burnout. Establishing a healthy routine and understanding that you got to be kind to yourself, because you're not the only one going through this. Okay, it's important. Schedule and prioritize those mental health breaks. Okay, just like taking some time to spend time with your family, not having that phone next to you all the time. Take a few deep breaths. Mindfulness is not just a word; it's a way of thinking and being, keeping in the present, maintaining a sense of humor. The late great comedian Milton Berle once said that laughter is like an instant vacation. Wouldn't that be nice to get once in a while? Healthy routines, prioritizing work and home, managing your time, asking for help. The onus is on each of us to individually set feasible boundaries and de-stress. Okay, and that sometimes might mean, yeah, disconnect. All right, try it. I challenge you. Don't charge your phone next to your bed. That's where I always charge it, because I want it right. Yeah, because you want to be able to check email, texts, last thing at night, first thing in the morning. Some people say to me, I use it as my alarm clock. Good. What's an alarm clock for? Get up out of bed, right? And put it on the other side of the room. So that when it goes off, that alarm clock phone notification, you get up and you turn it off and you're up. It's a wake-up call, remember? So as I said, it's up to us to set those feasible boundaries and achieve work-life balance, and getting away from the number of times that I have a whole presentation on being shackled to a screen, and the thousands of times that we touch our phone every single day. The number of times you make physical contact with the screen. It's mind-boggling, okay? And the number of times we check emails and check texts and send texts and social media and things like that. Unplug, folks, unplug. Why don't you take a little bit of time and do what, look, I got out of law school in 1973, so I'm going to call myself an old dog who learned a new trick. Meditation. I talked about it, but I didn't do it. That is one thing I put on my phone, a meditation app. Changed my life. Changed my life. 10 minutes at night, 10 minutes in the morning. My suggestion to you is that you devote 1 hour a day to you. What? An hour? Guess what? Do the math. It's 4% of your life. Is 4% too much to ask to take care of you, problem solver, to keep you from being just a problem collector? Huh? Well, I don't think it is. So that's what your challenge is. 1 hour a day. Whenever you're on an airplane, keep in mind what they always tell us when we leave the gate. In the event of a loss in cabin pressure, oxygen mask will come down. If you're traveling with someone that needs help, what do they tell us to do? Put our own oxygen masks on first, then help the person you're traveling with. I'm suggesting that you need to work on putting your own oxygen mask on so that you can help your family, your colleagues, your clients. You got to take care of you before you can do that. Solve their problems, but you got to take care of you, the problem solver, so that you don't just collect them for a living. Yeah, eat healthy and exercise and cultivate a positive attitude. They're all great things too. Don't overuse alcohol and drugs, but just sometimes it takes a matter of just a few deep breaths. Close your eyes just a couple times. De-stress. 10 seconds, 15 seconds, just something like that. Meditation, mindfulness, reduce the mental chatter, start some breathing, help eliminate those what ifs in your life. Be of help to other people. I don't have enough time to go through all of these, but be grateful. I talked about, there's another one of my granddogs. That's Gunner. I'm going to see him later. But be grateful. I challenge you now to use 1 minute of your precious day to write down everything you have to be grateful for. 1 minute with a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper. Write them down, journal it, look at it. You'll be shocked at how many things you can write down in 1 minute. Get that parasympathetic nervous system working. It's the opposite of the fight and flight system. It's the rest and digest system. Okay. And how do you do it? You do it with some of these activities that I had on the screen here that I moved quickly through, because I need to get to asking yourself to give yourself a chance for success. Be kind to yourself, declutter, don't isolate. You know, we're in an emotionally detached thinker, not feel or not thinker lifestyle. Win, lose, black, white. One lawyer's win is another lawyer's loss. The quest to win becomes paramount in our efforts to give our clients the ethical, zealous representation that we're duty bound to provide to them. But that comes with a cost. You know, it really does. We have high expectations and accountability to take care of all these other things. And why don't we get any help? Because we're ashamed, because we're embarrassed, because of the stigma that surrounds these issues in our society are disproportionately magnified in the legal profession. So we engage in denial. I know, because I went through all of these things. And I know what it's like to be in denial and to rationalize and to minimize your behavior to the point where I said, I can take care of this on my own. And if you know somebody else that's struggling, don't lighten the normal stresses of our profession. Help them, ask them some questions. Don't enable them. Don't prevent them from getting the help that they need. I need you at the center of the ripple effect. That saved my life, that ripple. That was a friend of mine who asked me a question. Are you okay? And I finally, after years of being impaired by alcohol and drugs, said yes. And he picked up the phone and the ripple got wider. And he called a lawyer's assistance program. And I didn't even know they existed, because I had said all these things that are on the screen right now. I can do this on my own. I'm not really like those other people, but I was, and I just didn't know what to do. This is our team here at LCL in Pennsylvania. This is what we do every single day. We can restore your family. We can restore your profession. These are, I'm going to leave you with my big five. Express gratitude for what you have. Create 1 hour a day to think and relax. Do one thing you love to do every single day, and set clear and realistic goals. And whatever you do, let go of fear. There's nothing to be afraid of but asking for help. It saved my life. It will save the life of lawyers every single day. And please don't wait. You can start your new cycle today. Your resolution can be a June 15th resolution. It doesn't have to be January the 1st. You know, we're lawyers. We impact society every single day of our lives. Just imagine the impact an impaired lawyer is having every single day somewhere on society. It's up to us as lawyers to ask questions of one another that may change somebody's life. But more importantly, it's up to us as lawyers to pick up the phone, make the call that may save someone's life. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. I wish you all a safe and sound 2022.
Thank you, Brian. Some definite items to be thinking about. I will be posting the PowerPoint on our website and sending out your MCLE credits. Thanks again.
Thank you. Have a great day.